I did an internship with a counseling service years ago. It was about 7 or 8 years ago. And we talked about the difference of, pastoral ministry and shepherding people versus being a counselor. And I love counselors, and I was really grateful to have this opportunity. And I was telling this one counselor, I was like, your people come in and they might have challenges and you see them and then they're gone. The difference is, like, our people that have challenges, they stick around, they hang out, their kids hang out with our kids,
right.
And then they hang out with other people who also have challenges.
Right.
And we're trying to figure out, man, how to love them well, shepherd them, and then, like, how do you navigate all of these different things that are coming across your plate on a regular Sunday, not just preaching, but just those relational pieces of ministry that can be so hard.
This is Breaking Barriers, where we help pastors and churches grow so that they can go.
Hey guys, welcome to Breaking Barriers. My name is Pastor Andrew Hopper. Special treat for us today. I'm here with a good friend of mine and church planner whose legacy looms large in the state of North Carolina. I'm here today with Ben Tugwell. Ben Tugwell planted Integrity Church in Greenville, North Carolina in 2009. I think you and I think we're trying to place the years here. I think we probably met each other around then, because I remember you had just started and we went up to a trip in New York. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And I told your staff earlier today what I remember about that is I think you just killed a deer that morning and then jumped on a plane to New York City. And I was like, this is my kind of guy. So
what I remember about that trip is just being really intrigued about what you guys were doing. And I can't remember if it was that early on or maybe it was a little bit later when we were already thinking about planting. It's hard for me to remember now. But either way, I remember having it in my mind that we were thinking about planting, or maybe even already on the pathway to that. And so I was wanting to get around you some, and that was just really cool. I remember Mike McDaniel took us up to New York, and it was funny because that's where I remembered that I decided I should plant a church because I didn't have a scarf, and I didn't have any really skinny jeans, and I didn't have any really pointy shoes. Okay. And that's what you're supposed to have, apparently. But you don't have those things.
I don't have those things, yeah.
No, I'm just joking. But cool, man. Well, Ben, why don't you do this? So our podcast is, and I know you've listened to some of it, but man, this podcast is very laser focused on helping churches grow so they can go. Yeah. All right, we say all the time, you can grow without going, but you can't go without growing. All right, if a church is going to be able to reproduce, send to the nation, certainly church plant, their seating capacity is going to fuel that. In fact, we've said for a long time, like sending capacity is more important than seating capacity, which I agree with. But for sending capacity, nothing is more important than seating capacity. Like that is going to be what ends up down the line creating the disciples who go out. I was telling our elders this very week, we had a big elder meeting, and I was talking about our latest church plant and how I was looking at all the people that were the team for that. And they're just long 10-year stories of people that have been in groups at Mercy Hill. Wow. And it was like, hey man, that's what it is. Like, it's just that, you grow people up and they overflow into these other ministries. You guys had a really good, in my opinion, whether you had the language for it or not, you guys really embodied this. Man, Integrity was a church that was concerned with growing locally. You wanted to reach people, baptize people, but you guys had a real missional bent to you, right?
Yeah. It was a college town, and so I think our core team was the vast majority of our core team that we established in those early days were college students. Yeah. And so, our budget was low. I think somebody gave us a Bojangles gift card in one of the offering plates one Sunday. So it was things like that we had to grind through and make disciples and see it grow, and then wanted to see that replicated in other places. So
it's awesome, man. Well, hey, for today's podcast, we want to take some of your experience and what you're doing now. You have transitioned now, so you were at Integrity over 15 years. Yep. Lead pastor, planted, grew, health, sending, still going on, good succession, awesome story. And yet, now that you're 6 months removed, you can feel the weight that is lifted. So you're in a position right now to speak to hundreds, literally, of churches, pastors and of hundreds of churches that are like, man, I know that I carry a weight. Maybe I don't know how much I really carry. So that's what we want to get into today. You're a coach now, not just for churches. Yeah. Really leaders of all stripes. But a lot of what you guys do is helping people understand emotions and how they process the body blows that come with what they're leading.
Yep.
So, man, I'll just turn it over to you. I'll ask some questions along the way, maybe
Yeah.
get some examples, but we would love to just kind of hear your perspective coming out of ministry in terms of vocational, and realizing, man, I was carrying a lot.
Yeah, I think starting a business is obviously difficult and challenging, so I don't want to minimize that at all. But it's been incredible just to make this move for my family, for my life, and really my legacy, what I want to leave behind for my boys, and the impact I really want to make. And I think it was last, Easter of 24 when I just felt God kind of stirred in my heart, and my wife kind of said, I just think it's time. I see this part of you growing and your reach is growing in this way. And I think it's time for us to really pray about what's next. And so we did, and it was a really hard decision to make.
I bet.
Because I absolutely love Integrity Church and love the people there. And with that, I think, told the church in, October of last year. So almost a year ago is when I was telling our church. And then I left in March of this year. March 2nd was my last Sunday of preaching at Integrity. And so I had a great ministry there. I loved the people there. Our elders knew me, loved me. I had healthy rhythms, and I took time off the way, I think you named how many months that you should take off in one of the recent podcasts. And I did all those things. Took the time for my wife and my family in the summers. We took a good number of time off and taking care of myself. I had coaches my whole time of pastoring. I had world-class coaches and counselors most of the time I was there. And I would say most of the time we were a pretty healthy church. And we didn't have a big interruption of problems, or there wasn't a mass exodus ever of people, or wasn't ever a scandal of a leader, all the things that we hear about and people that we know, we're close to, that run into those challenges. And I left, and 6 months now, and here I am. I'm doing work in a self-aware space, right? We're trying to help leaders be more curious about themselves, figure out where they get stuck, so they can get healthier patterns to move forward. So I'm in this space. I do all the right steps in this space to get the help that I need and the people I need around me. And still, even all those practices, having the right systems in place to make sure I'm healthy and maintaining. Wow. It's still 6 months later, I'm like, that affected me even more than I realized. Right. And I think that is one of the kind of ahas of pastoral ministry, that, man, I just not realized just the toll of pastoral ministry, and what it requires of your heart and soul and your emotions and your body, all of it.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about that before. We had kind of an episode that went a little bit viral for us. I mean, this is obviously a highly niche. We're talking about mostly lead pastors or higher end leaders at churches that want to grow and go. I mean, it's a niche thing, but we had for us kind of the one that went a little viral when I was talking a lot about just pastoral health and trying to say, hey, man, none of us are. I mean, I'm not saying none of us. I don't hear you. I'm not whining about it.
Yeah.
Like, man, we choose this.
Yeah.
It's our life. I feel like Jeremiah, if you shut it up in my bones, it's going to burn.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, I've decided, like, man, this is what I'm giving this part of my life to, just like you did for 15 years. That integrity, like, nobody made me do that. I mean, I'm a grown man. Like, I wouldn't have it any other way. At the same time, we've also got to acknowledge it is doing something to us.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Those things can both be true, So the way I don't know, this is a little bit of a poignant example, but I gave the example in that podcast before. I don't know if it resonated with you, but it's like being 100 years ago and working in a coal mine. It's like, man, I can love that job and it can provide for my family, and maybe I'm a generation of coal miners. At the same time, black lung's kind of part of the deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so none of us, I'm going to say none of us. I'm not, you're not. I don't know about others. I don't think even in this podcast, what we're trying to do is say all of that's hard can be avoided just if you do good boundaries.
No.
Some of it is black lung. It is unavoidable.
Unavoidable.
But that should hide that. My fear is that people would say, well, if it's unavoidable, who cares? And it's like, no. It's
the opposite.
It should be the opposite.
Yeah.
It's unavoidable, so you better be ready, right?
Yep. Yeah, and you named something really well. You in that podcast you're referring to of specifically preaching and kind of the wear and tear of you, your heart, your body when you do that.
Right.
Just I mean, even your vocal cords, like those kind of things. But you talked about a tightrope. You're up there for X amount of time, 30 to 45 minutes. You're up there preaching, and you do that, maybe 2, 3, some of us 4, 5, whatever times a Sunday. And you're running that tightrope. You're sitting in that tension for that amount of time. I would say, for that amount of time that you walk off the stage, but there's another layer to that. And I would say there's a relational tightrope that you run too of being a pastor, because, all right, you're going to walk into the lobby and you're going to see, oh man, there's that couple over there that they're in a tough spot.
Right.
I just met with them this week and I wonder how they're doing. And then there's another one, oh, that one's pretty disgruntled right now, and I don't know if they're going to stick around, And then there's another one. Oh, there's another person that,
and they're talking to others about it.
And they're talking to others about it, right? And it's just the stress and the tension that you feel even in the lobby of the tightrope. I remember I did an internship with a counseling service years ago. It was about 7 or 8 years ago, and we talked about the difference of, pastoral ministry and shepherding people versus being a counselor. And I love counselors, and I was really grateful to have this opportunity. And I was telling this one counselor, I was like, your people come in and they might have challenges and you see them and then they're gone. The difference is, like, our people that have challenges, they stick around, they hang out, their kids hang out with our kids,
right.
And then they hang out with other people who also have challenges.
Right.
And we're trying to figure out, man, how to love them well, shepherd them, and then, like, how do you navigate all of these different things that are coming across your plate on a regular Sunday? Not just preaching, but just those relational pieces of ministry that can be so hard.
Yeah, so I think you've kind of broken down some of the ways that we need to think through this stuff in terms of what it can be doing to us. And what are the 3 ways? What are the 3 things you did for our staff? Relationships. And then what? Responsibilities, realities, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And even in the relationships bucket, as we're starting to kind of broach that conversation now in terms of ways that we need to be aware, one of the things that I've said before is, like, a normal human, I don't know what the actual data is on this, okay? But just think about a normal human that's getting up in the morning, their kids go to school, they're going to work, good job, they've got a team of people. They probably know, like, 4 or 5 absolute crises that are going on in other people's lives.
Yeah.
Somebody, their kid's school has cancer. Somebody they work with is in a divorce. Mm-hmm. Whatever, their brother-in-law. Yeah. It's like, it could be 5, it could be 15, whatever. I don't know. But there's, like, a certain level that's you and I, and, live in a world where it's like, we just know, like, hundreds of things like that.
Yeah.
That are literally.
Yeah.
Over the course of, like, 10 years in ministry, you will end up knowing.
Sometimes 1 year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You will know hundreds of horrific situations.
Yeah.
And some of them are less heartbreaking than others. Some of the health ones are almost less heartbreaking. Like, they're terrible.
Yeah.
But they're just kind of less of a body blow. It's more, but some of them are not just the health stuff. It's actually sin issues. Mm-hmm. It's abandonment.
Yeah.
It's the broken family. It's an egregious sin. It's just gut-wrenching kind of stuff. That stuff kind of layers up.
Yeah, and sometimes you're talking to people that are in those situations that have blinders on. I mean, how many times have I read Psalm 51 to a brother who's in sin and doesn't want to see it? And I'm like, hey, like, this is what repentance looks like. Please, like, look at this. And they don't, and they leave, and they want to stay in it. Right. Oh man, those are hard. And those are really painful to walk through, and you carry that. Yeah, you carry that as a pastor and as a leader.
So just generally thinking about, like, this idea of, and I know we'll talk about the 3 R's, but, like, you talked about being 6 months removed, and you can kind of feel the burden lift a little bit.
Yeah,
and you're walking into a new business, so I mean, there's burdens with that, obviously.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I would love to hear you talk about just this kind of idea of, man, and it can sound like such psychobabble mumbo jumbo, It can sound like, man, you're weak. And, when you start talking about things like, man, our body kind of stores up some of this stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But you made a really good point with our staff. It's like, what we want to become all of a sudden theological dichotomists, where it's like, hey, man, you're either emotional or you're physical, and yet your body has tear ducts for a reason.
For a reason.
Because the body understands some kind of way that there is more of an integration than we can even realize. So how is it that our bodies can kind of store some of these stressors that are happening week in, weekend as we push the boulder up the mountain?
Yeah, one of my favorite pieces of the Imago Dei is that when we think about made in the image of God, what does that even look like? Does it mean we have the physical appearance of God? Does it mean, and I would say no, I don't think that's what it's about. I would say it's about we're spiritual beings, and part of that is we're complex individuals. There's so many layers to our human, our humanity, and part of that is we also have emotions, and our emotions they shouldn't, I use the analogy, I've heard this before, I stole this from somebody a long time ago, but it's kind of like a car. You don't want your emotions to drive the car. They shouldn't drive the car and be in control of your life, and they shouldn't be in the trunk of the car either. But you want your emotions to be in the back seat, sort of strapped in. Right. So you know how to access them, you know how to look at them, you know how to name them, you know how to express them. And I think that's part of the Imago Dei. God is an emotional God. Times he gets angry and sad, and he's happy, and all those things, we see those in the character of God, not just in Jesus, but also God's character. Even in the Old Testament, we'd see those characteristics show up in who God is. And so if we're made in his image, certainly we're going to have to experience some of those emotions. And so how healthy, how accurate, how context appropriate are those emotions? And so I think when I find a leader that might be stuck, I might ask them, hey, how are you experiencing emotions? Maybe they're Dallas Cowboys fans and they're angry all the time. They're breaking TV screens. Well, that's probably not a context appropriate emotion. Well, let's look at anger. What else is making you angry that you haven't processed or filtered in a healthy way? And or maybe they had a situation where they just experienced a good number of losses and they haven't felt sad about that. Okay, well, what would sadness look like for you? Because that would be a context appropriate emotion. Or maybe they can't. Okay, my son turned 16 and we just celebrated his birthday, but I didn't feel happy. Well, man, let's get into like why that is. Like being made in the image of God is feeling happy for your son. Yeah. Because God certainly is happy with us and rejoices with us when we, when we honor him and glorify him. And so that's what I think that's what that looks like. Is like, what are those? How do we use those in like a context appropriate way?
Right.
And I think you're asking me too about what I'm feeling right now on this side of it. There's a lot in this space right now, and it can be overused at times. Of like, okay, there's a lot of language around church hurt, and I totally empathize. When I was working with that counseling service, I did sit in sessions where people did experience abuse in the church and spiritual abuse and manipulation, all those things. And man, those are so hurtful and so harmful. And I have clients that experience those as well, and I want to sit with them. But I think there's something also worth looking at is how much, man, us pastors, we go through. And again, you named it. We're not trying to bellyache, complain. We desired a noble task, as what Paul would say to Timothy. Yeah. We desired this, right? But I do think we need to pay attention to the amount of losses we experience in pastoral ministry. Right. So you talked about people and like what they are aware of around them and in their world of like how many hard things and how many things we're aware of. Totally. But I would say too, like you think about the amount of close friends that an average person loses. And maybe it's, 7 to 10 in a lifetime, right? I would say pastors, man, we can go through that cycle 3 to 4 times in 3 to 4 years, we can go through that amount of friends that we would lose and close relationships just because of the nature of the role. You get close and then, oh man, I thought we were closer and now we're not. And I think that relational toll, man, it could play so much into our life. We're not aware of it. And I think that's the stuff that kind of caught up to me was like, oh, I didn't realize that was still going on there, know?
Yeah. And I loved your analogy when you shared it with our staff, because there are good examples of leaders that are sort of in the trunk or leading with the, I think like when I read the Steve Jobs biography, the Isaacson, it's like, dude, the guy was a basket case emotionally.
Yeah.
And it felt like maybe that the emotions were driving the thing.
Yeah.
But I think you and I, especially coming out of like, blue collar world and like you think about the heroes of our dads and all that kind of stuff, it was more the other way. It was like, man, the leader is a guy who kind of is so even killed. Yeah. You never know what he's going through or any of that stuff. And so there's these two, so leaders can miss on both of those. And I think what we're saying is because of the task and because of the difficulties that we're going to experience, it is very good for us to try to build the emotional muscle.
Yeah.
To just try to process some of that stuff in the right way and to try to stay healthy. One of the examples that I used was like, man, we have a lot of first responders at Mercy Hill. Thank God for them. We have police officers, we have military, some military, like reserve and stuff like that. And then we have a lot of firemen, actually, firefighters. And so, if I know that my job is going to be like running into a burning building, throwing somebody on my shoulder, climbing 5 steps of stairs and getting out, and I know the hazard of that, then like I'm going to know that I can do 100 push-ups.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't diminish like the danger of what you're trying to do,
No.
But you are trying to prepare a body and prepare yourself mentally to have the courage and the strength, the faith to say like, hey man, I'm ready. Like I'm as ready as I can be.
Yeah.
To run into that burning building.